G'day, film fans. I'm Dave.
I'm Jeff.
And
I'm a different Jeff.
A different Jeff. And I'm John. And welcome back to The Love of Cinema, a pod in which we'll challenge one another to discuss movies, both new and old, with a strictly positive critical eye.
That's right. And to keep us honest, we've made this a drinking game. Yes, a drinking game. That's what I said. And so if we say anything negative about a film, because quite frankly, we're sick of people doing that, you will hear this sound. And that means that person has to drink. So pour yourselves a glass, and we're gonna take a little bit of a trip back here for something that we probably should have seen by now, some of us.
Definitely. We will get to that in just a moment. Real fast, I just want to call out our shout outs to our sponsors.
Yes.
As always, we have the beer sponsor, Carlos Barroso. You can find them on Instagram. That's C Barroso Bar 2019 if you want to give them a follow. That's CBARROZOBAR 2019. And if you're digging the music, you can go to soundcloud.com/Dasein-artist, and you can download all the music available for free by the artist Dasein. And want to welcome back our other Jeff. He has been with us before. This is Jeff Ronan of the And Almost Starring podcast. He has been with us. Perhaps you will recall the Batman Forever episode we did at some point over the pandemic, which was just a fucking blast. So thank you so much, man. Why don't you just remind everybody about your show, who you guys are, if you want to just give yourselves a little shout out, and hopefully some listeners will get thrown your way as well, because this show is great. If you are a movie fan, you're going to want to follow this show.
Thank you, man. I appreciate that intro. Yes, I'm different Jeff. I'm Jeff Ronan here with you today as your alternate host. So And Almost Starring is now, it was a weekly show. We're currently going bi-weekly for a little while, all for good reasons, for work-related reasons. But each episode, we take a film. We've done everything so far from Godfather, Who Framed Roger Rabbit, Silence of the Lambs, very eclectic mix, and we'll break down all the actors who were almost cast. My wife, Amy Jo Jackson, who's also been on your guys' show, on you might have heard her on Singing in the Rain.
Special shout out for Amy Jo. She's the only person. Not only was she the first woman we had on the show, she's the first person to do this show with hard liquor.
Yeah. Oh, that was awesome.
I would have. We're recording a little earlier. It's 3:45. I considered just breaking out some Jameson, and I was like, I got things I got to accomplish later today. But so she does no research before our episode. So she will hear along with our listeners. Good. She'll get like all of these alternate casting options, like in the moment. We do fantasy casting as well. It's very silly. It's very fun. Come check us out. You can. We're on Instagram and Facebook at And Almost Starring, and you can hear us probably wherever you're listening to this episode right now.
Hell yeah. Well, welcome back, man. We're so excited to have you back. This is fun.
And don't worry about forgetting your lines in the intro. Other Jeff fucks it up all the time.
Did he forget his name? You point at him as well. Like, this is where you introduce yourself.
No, we just let him hang. We like you.
Yeah. Anyway, we are so excited. This is the midweek episode. Anyone who's been following us recently knows that we're kind of trying to split up basically three different segments we're floating between right now. We're trying to cover some good new movies, which we are going to have some exciting ones to do next week that we'll tell you about at the end of the episode. Sometimes we are still doing our classic Redemption, or Was It Really That Bad, where we pick a infamously, perhaps notoriously, perhaps deservingly so bad movie from the cinematic universe.
Sometimes all three.
We try to talk about whether or not it deserved it. If you checked out Monday or Tuesday's episode, can't remember this week, we did Superman 4, and I think we all landed on yes, unfortunately, it was really that bad. Sorry, Superman franchise.
If that's just in case it's a spoiler alert for anyone.
Just in case. I still recommend listening because it was hilarious. And that movie is a funny watch if you enjoy watching fun, bad movies. And this segment that we're going to be doing today in the midweek episode is our Should Have Seen It By Now. So anyone who doesn't follow us on the socials at The Love of Cinema pod for basically everything except for Twitter. We're just at The Love of Cinema there. If you want to go on, follow us, give us some love, you can submit through messages or any way you can contact us. You can submit some films that you either think are really terrible that you want us to do and wasn't really that bad, or this segment, a movie that you have shamefully never seen before but feel that you should have seen it by now. And I am so excited today because both of these co-hosts of mine today, both Jeff Ronan from And Almost Starring podcast and Dave Green from the Love of Cinema Pod. Those are two, let me clarify that. Those are two movie podcast hosts who have never seen today's movie, Stanley Kubrick's
sounding a little negative.
Dr.
Negative towards me.
Strangelove. It's not at all. You guys, I'm so excited. You know what? I'll buzz myself for that one. How about that? That's me buzzing myself. I'm gonna take a quick drink.
No, I was gonna let you have that shot. That's fair.
The title of the movie, the entire title, because it's so much fun, it's so ridiculous. If you don't understand that this is a comedy, hopefully you will after reading the title. Dr. Strangelove, or How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love the Bomb. Most people just know this as Dr. Strangelove. The little IMDb blurb for the plot is: an insane general triggers a path to nuclear holocaust that a war room full of politicians and generals frantically tries to stop. So this is Stanley Kubrick's film from 1964. It came right between Lolita, which was 1962, and 2001: A Space Odyssey in 1968. Lolita was right after Spartacus as well. So basically anyone who's a Kubrick fan, just to give you some kind of context for where he was when he made this, he was hired to produce and direct Spartacus and Paths of Glory before that. The Killing was one of his own. Killer's Kiss was one of his own. Fear and Desire. So he had a few independent things. Then kind of classically got Kirk Douglas noticed him, so hired him for Paths of Glory, hired him for Spartacus. Then him and his producing partner, who I will look up at some point in this episode, I cannot remember. Him and Stanley Kubrick's producing partner broke off and did Lolita. That was their first one that they wanted to tackle, which was a very controversial
what a way to start.
I don't know if anyone, what a way to start.
Hey, we're going to start on our own. How should we ease in? Oh, Lolita.
Lolita. Let's just
adapt an unadaptable book.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, if anyone who doesn't know that story, I'm not gonna try to summarize it on this little podcast right now. Yeah, but a very bold first film. Let's put it that way. A very bold first film, and he follows it up with Dr. Strangelove, which, as we will begin to talk about, I'm going to hear the thoughts from these guys, also is very bold in its own ways. 1964, right in the middle of the Cold War era. Our parents were learning how to hide under desks in case nuclear bombs went off, and he made a comedy about that subject matter. So first things first, as we do when we do this segment, let me ask each of you. Jeff, we'll let you go first. We'll throw you in the hot seat for a second. Is there a reason why you have never seen this yet? Or are you a Kubrick fan? Do you just not? Tell me how you got to a point at this age where you haven't seen it.
I kind of had just a lot of Kubrick blind spots. I only saw 2001 for the first time a few years ago, which I waited. They did I don't know if it was a remaster or whatnot, but it was in IMAX theaters a few years ago. So I was like, well, that seems like the perfect time to find. I could have done like Lawrence of Arabia you should have seen it by now, because that's one that I own. But once again, I'm like, I can't watch this on my TV. This needs to be seen on a giant screen. Yeah. That's how I felt about 2001, which I had a great time at. But nice. I've always had, I only saw Lolita for the first time a few years ago, really only because I should I say this question mark? But when I was younger, really the main ones that I'd seen of Kubrick were The Shining. I'd seen A Clockwork Orange and Full Metal Jacket. And I just saw a lot of blind spots. I'd never seen Dr. Strangelove, never saw Barry Lyndon, never saw Spartacus. I kind of want to go and see The Killing now, because that seems so different, because it's also Sterling Hayden who plays Ripper in this film. But I had tried to watch this movie twice, I think once in high school and once in college, which was when I was really starting. I was trying to go and see as many classic films as I could in that time. That's when I saw Godfather for the first time, and probably when I saw those other Kubricks, when I saw Clockwork Orange and Full Metal Jacket. And I remember always getting a half hour in to Dr. Strangelove, and just I couldn't get into it. And this time I kind of abandoned going into it as the comedy, because it also it takes a while before the comedy really comes out. If you don't know you're seeing a comedy, you've got a good half hour, a third of the film really, for you have what I would constitute any kind of hard joke, or even within the context of this is a satire. And of course you do open your film, you've got these this lovingly photographed and scored scene of these planes refueling as if they're fucking midair, which is pretty delightful. But
it's not something that's easily missed either. It's yep, that's what's happening. There's no room for misinterpretation here.
Exactly, right. So I enjoyed it this time, but I kind of had to go into it taking off the veneer of comedy, to not worry if I don't find it funny, because there were parts that I found funny, but it's also so much of it that I just find stressful of how much is like,
I think
these idiots are going to kill us all. So I think at high school, I just wasn't able to get in. I just wasn't able to get into it. I wanted to so badly, and I just did not care. I couldn't.
No, that's cool.
Find my way
I totally
in.
feel you. I think we're going to end up talking about that. Just his tone and stuff in general. And like, it's almost a shame that we have to think of it in such an absolute way with being labeled a comedy. Thanks, dude. Yeah, I definitely want to hear how you felt about it this time. Dave, just real fast, man. Tell us why you've never seen this until now. Is there a reason?
Fucking hate Kubrick.
Fucking hates Kubrick.
You're gonna hate a person in general. You gotta beat that.
All right, fine. Come on.
I'm just gonna buzz you over and over and over again for that.
No, I mean, I like 2001. I like The Shining. The other thing I saw apart from that was Full Metal Jacket. I'm not really into war films as such. It just doesn't do it for me at all. And then Eyes Wide Shut, which was meh.
Really?
And so, yeah. And so I just never went back and looked at some of the earlier stuff, and until now. Okay. Where because of this show, we have done Paths of Glory, and now we've done Dr. Strangelove.
Yeah. So, so I basically set it up with the general IMDb blurb. But so this is takes place basically in a few different settings. It's basically 3 different stories being told. One is a military base, an Air Force base in America. One is on a B-52 bomber with the bombing team, because the given scenario, there's a prescript that comes up and tells you in writing that at this point in history, and I'm not even sure how true this is. I think it might be true, because we definitely have we have submarines that do this all the time right now. There were B-52s flying around it all the time, and around enemy airspace, not in enemy airspace, but around it, ready to get the go-ahead to start dropping fucking bombs everywhere, nuclear warheads, right? So we have the Air Force base on the ground. We have the setting on the B-52 plane itself. And then we have a bunch of politicians, including the President of the United States and all the top generals in the, quote, the war room. I think we now call it the Situation Room, but I think I like Stanley Kubrick's design better than the way the West Wing did it. I'm just going to put that out there. So you basically have these 3 different settings. One actor lives in all of them, and I'm sure we'll get to his amazing performance at some point. But so let's just go for it. Jeff, you were kind of starting to touch on it already. Did it help that you went into it without that comedy thing? Was it able to turn into something else for you, or like let's just start.
I gotta say, this might be one of the strangest quartet of main performers that I can recall seeing in a film, between Peter Sellers, George C. Scott, Slim Pickens, and Sterling Hayden. Right? That's I'm not. Wait, is it Sterling Hayden as a Ripper? Yeah, because he played Ripper. Is playing it so straight, like he is terrifying in that whole like monologue with he's got the cigar and they're shooting him like from the ground, where he's talking about like, oh, this guy's crazy. This guy has just decided I'm going to launch an attack now because the Ruskies are dropping fluoride in our water. Then Slim Pickens, which I'm not sure how I feel about Slim Pickens in this film, knowing that. So from what I do know, that they wanted Peter Sellers for 4 roles, and they have him in 3. So you've got this great trio of comedic performances. Even the president, who is kind of the straight man, that to me is the funniest scenes in the film. Is him on the phone.
Yes. I'm fine.
Yes, I was like, he did something
Dimitri.
Funny. He made a little mess of it. Dimitri.
Genius.
Well, no, of course I like talking with you, Dimitri. Like that all brilliant.
Can you turn down the music? Please turn on the music.
The very first thing. Major, I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
But then he was supposed to originally also play Major Kong, the Slim Pickens role, and then he broke his leg, and so they were like, okay, well, that's all being filmed done at the end of filming. So don't worry, Peter. We'll find someone else.
Just to clarify, folks, Slim Pickens plays the captain, the main pilot of that B-52 bomber setting. So that would have been the third and final place that we would have seen this man. Fourth and final place, because. Oh yeah, we'll get to it in a minute.
And Dr. Strangelove, of course, Peter Sellers.
And Dr. Strangelove, who also exists in the war room. Yeah, continue.
But Slim Pickens, apparently they only showed him his pages, and so he played it straight. And so to me, where the comedy of all that is just having him with his yeehaw accent, which is how this gentleman talks, and he's dressed how this gentleman dresses. And that's the joke. That's the joke, is that like he's such a like like Texan that is gonna lead us to our doom. Like I still can't really get on board. Love seeing babyface James Earl Jones hiding out in that plane with them. But that to me is so strange. But that this film has that, Slim Pickens and Sterling Hayden, Peter Sellers in this trio of roles, and George C. Scott like a maniac in this film, which I love. But it's bananas to me of how that it feels like they are all in such different films. The fact that Peter Sellers is in the same film as Sterling Hayden and Slim Pickens, like these are wildly different performances, and I think it works, but I'm still not 100% sure. But I did definitely enjoy it more actually watching the entire thing through. Of course, the only way to see a movie, I don't think it's fair to judge a film if you've not seen it from start to finish. But I did love knowing, because I never reached the stuff with Dr. Strangelove the first times that I watched it, because you don't really get to him, he doesn't speak until like almost halfway through the film, but you do see him in the background in the scenes with George C. Scott and Peter Sellers as the president talking, and you just see like if you know to look for him, you're in the background, you're like, there's also Peter Sellers, which is so funny.
I leaned forward, I was like, is that David Lynch in the back of that shot? I was like,
oh man, that would have been awesome.
Yeah, right.
I agree with you, dude. I think and Dave, I'm sure we're all going to end up talking about this a little bit. Like sometimes I hate when things get labeled, because I'm trying to imagine, I didn't try to find a trailer for this or anything. 1964, maybe you had heard that this person made Lolita. Maybe you know who Peter Sellers is, so you're assuming it's going to be kind of funny. But even then, if you're a fan of Peter Sellers' comedy, they're always offbeat, right? They're always a little, they're always a little absurd. And I feel like
he's terrifying in Lolita. Like he is technically the comic relief, but he's also a predator, and as is Humbert, of course, and is legit a terrifying presence in that film. I probably was a little in real life as well, from what I know of Peter Sellers.
I mean, he's got to be. Dave, what do you think, dude?
I'm just very interested in the fact that like, Kubrick is famous for doing multiple takes, take after take after take after take, till he gets what he wants. Sellers is famous for never doing the same thing twice. Why would you put those two together? Like that seems like either an absolute nightmare or pure fucking genius. And in my opinion, I think we got the second one out of this.
Yeah, I do agree with that. I think that's like kind of what a perfectionist sometimes needs when it comes to Kubrick. That is like what shakes it up. Because I think that all works. I think all of Peter Sellers' stuff works. I think it is a reason that he was nominated for an Oscar for it. I think it's a brilliant trio of performances.
Sometimes Kubrick doesn't know what he wants till he sees it, I think. And
for sure,
and I guess that's true of a lot of directors. Like they'll run it and then they'll run it again, and let's try this, and then you see what works on the time. If there's like 3 takes max for Sellers, and he's off doing something else, and so you get, I guess, a lot of variety. And it really shone in this. Like he pulls it right back in the British army character.
Like
he pulls it right back. He plays it very effeminate. And then the president is, you're right, he's 100% straight man. But he's saying some of the most ridiculous things with 100% conviction, and that is when comedy works the best.
Yeah,
it's like, I'm not going for a laugh. This is just ridiculous.
And the way that I think you're totally right. And the way that he films,
and then Strangelove is just classic Sellers, but
of course. And the way they film this, it's such the takes are long, so even that kind of spits in the face of what comedy usually is. Things have changed throughout the ages. I think they probably did take a little bit more time. The cutting wasn't rapid fire like we kind of expect of our comedies nowadays. Even someone like Adam McKay and Judd Apatow nowadays, they love letting people go and go and go and go and go. But then you can tell when they get in the cutting room, they're like desperately trying to match things up so that they can keep a quicker pace. Kubrick often was just pointing a camera at Peter Sellers and letting him go, right? And like you kind of wait until he finds a funny moment. He lingers a little bit directing wise, and then he might cut away from him if they has to see somebody else talk, which I think I'm curious. I know what you guys are saying. I've always been curious why he was so attracted to Peter Sellers, because maybe you could say he took a chance on him for Lolita, but clearly he did this on purpose for this movie, casting him again and trying to get him for multiple roles.
Yeah, in multiple roles.
thought I remembered reading that the studio wanted Sellers because they thought, or maybe they at least wanted Sellers playing multiple roles. They wanted to be playing as many roles as possible because they thought that was one of the reasons why Lolita was a success, was Peter Sellers was playing multiple parts. And I can't remember now if he's actually playing multiple parts or if his one guy is just in disguise and playing and as other characters. I
as the
can't
character.
remember.
Yeah, I know.
It's been a while, but I remember that they thought that. So I don't know if maybe how much Kubrick wanted him in it, or if it was the studio, or if Kubrick wanted him for maybe less than 3 or 4 roles. That I don't know. But yeah, it is one of those things that should not work on paper, but I think is such a big selling point in the film.
Yeah. So what did you guys think? Can you imagine just putting on the your time capsule hat and seeing a movie like this? Like I was listening to you talk about the Slim Pickens thing, and let's just pretend that we don't know anything about like the casting situation and what happened with them. Let's assume that they did this on purpose and that Kubrick got exactly what he wanted out of it. It almost kind of makes sense that up until that point, after World War II, there hadn't been too many absurd war comedies, and the whole like America, like I think we're so overridden with that trope by now, and the stereotype is so dead. I wonder if it played differently back then, like when he switches his helmet for the the straw cowboy hat, and just immediately setting it up from the beginning. Like everything is very blatant. Do you think it would have watched differently back then? Do you think it would have been a little bit more comedic than maybe it is to somebody right now who's kind of watching this waiting for the comedy?
I don't think so, because I think you're talking 64, so there was a lot of like the anti-war, movement was starting around like the conflicts that America was involved in. So I feel like a lot of people would have been 100% on board with that characterization at that point.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think so too, for sure. I think it probably would have been welcomed just for the sake of the stereotype in the storytelling. I wonder if people were like, fuck yeah, that's like what all Americans are like, or if they were able to.
I don't know.
He's like me.
I don't know if it was a stereotype because no one had done it yet. It's a stereotype now.
Yeah. I mean,
but he started that stereotype. I think like it was almost
when your
like
film is fully satire, because this film, nominated for Peter Sellers at the Oscars, nominated for writing, directing, and Best Picture. There's a Best Picture nominee. So this film and I think it did well, if I remember that it did. People saw this to some extent, but it's still, this isn't like the comedy of the year. This is still like your Stanley Kubrick intellectual satire that is going to play really well for some people and really well for not. Like, I feel like it reminds me a lot of like, what's his name? Armando Iannucci of like Death of Stalin and In the Loop, like that kind of like dagger of political satire that you're like, yeah, you can laugh at this, but really you should be terrified that this is the world we live in where all of this could actually happen. So I'm curious if if the flyover states in the US are like, let's go cart up the kids and go see the new Stanley Kubrick comedy. And I hated it all, but that Major Kong, that is the man for me. I don't know of how this played for people back then. I feel like, we were so scared, had like that, the Cold War, the fear at any moment could be doomsday. So on the one hand, it is like the relief to be able to laugh, like to someone give you permission. Really, like with Mel Brooks starting to be like, let's just make fun of Hitler. Let's make fun of Hitler and the Nazis as much as we can, because it's the only way to take power away from people is to laugh at them. And this just takes power away from, it's also the US government. It's not, we're not just making fun of the Ruskies. It is all of our own government and all of the way. I love that opening with the US Air Force, like the just text of being like, the US Air Force wants to make sure that none of this could actually happen.
Despite the fact it's probably happened at least 3 times, like almost.
They said that after this film was a reason that they had to make more fail-safes and change a lot of things. So really, if nothing else, this film probably helped save us from nuclear Armageddon in real life.
Yes. I mean, honestly, and he kind of did that. He's a bit of a fortune teller in that sense, isn't he? Like with 2001, I mean, I think there were a lot of things that he kind of, predicted isn't really the right word, but just based on research and where things were happening. He's such a he's such a stickler for details. Apparently, I'm sure he researched enormous amounts. I saw an IMDb trivia that he read like over 50 books.
Those telephones on the moon, we have them now.
Mm-hmm. Really?
No.
No. Superman 4 would be able to fix that.
Yes.
How else are you going to call Superman? You got to put a phone on the moon.
Jesus Christ! Almighty.
Let's not go back there. I do love that, like, in these, like, it is political satire, and it's making fun of, like, the US government, the US war movement, all that sort of stuff. But it's also straight up a comedy. Like, it's poking fun, but there's also some, like, I laughed out loud. I can't tell you how many times during this, like, with some of the ridiculous shit, particularly in the war room that they were coming out with. It's like, what was my favorite line in the whole film? It's like, you can't fight in here. This is the war room.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, of course. Yeah, it's so classic.
Yeah, I found like all the war room stuff so good. That to me is because it is such a tripod of a film that it's balanced between the scenes on the plane, the stuff with Peter Sellers as Mandrake, the RAF agent, with Sterling Hayden, and then the war room. And I think the war room stuff to me imbalances it almost too much, because that to me is so successful in all the war room. And George C. Scott, we don't even talk about George C. Scott. He is giving a bananas performance in this, and I think it's so good. He's so wildly, like, it touches the ceiling of over the top, like just barely stops from going completely over the line. But I love it. I never expected, even with Patton, I never expected to see like this level of George C. Scott going like frothing at the mouth, airplaning around. Yeah.
I mean, it just, there are certain like, rules of performing satire. And I think you get to see like two, like really, achieved actors showing you different versions of how to approach that kind of work. And Scott, it sounds like, was resisting going that direction. But I think if he had also tried to go low opposite Peter Sellers' Strangelove and the President, and tried to make it more nuanced and strange and just kind of quieter, like neither one of them ever really goes bananas or raises their voice and is driven insane by their obstacles. I think it would, I don't know if it would have worked if it would have just been these two guys like playing it slow and serious, especially because Sterling Hayden was doing something so grounded in the Air Force base. I want to mention that I feel like we do keep saying, I've seen this movie a few times now, and yes, it is a comedy, but I feel like satire really lands for me when at the end of it, it's a tragedy.
Oh, there's also a really good counterpoint going through it. Sorry, you broke up there for a second on the Zoom. There's a really good counterpoint going through it where you've got this looming bomber heading towards its destination, and they keep cutting back to it, and it's progressing towards its destination. It's like, are they gonna go there, or are they not? Is this thing going to drop? And it's just this really good tension device that builds opposite the comedy for what's going on. Because you've got this really serious event here, and counterpointing that, you've got these complete fucking idiots taking phone calls from their mistresses and like arguing over, who can see the big board when we let them in the fucking office, and ridiculous things that have no bearing whatsoever in their situation. And you just want to grab them and shake them, and it's like, fucking pay attention. There's something serious going on over here, but you're not taking it seriously. And I feel like that, like, to evoke that is really, really, really good.
I mean, it's always useful when you have like something that is creating a time limit, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like overall, clock. You have something pushing against it, which is, commentary. Eventually they created the doomsday clock, right? Over, and I'm not sure when that was actually invented, but just the idea that we're always ticking down to some kind of world's end.
Yes.
Great. Always good to be reminded of that.
If you don't know what the doomsday clock is, do not look it up for a couple of years. Just saying. We got a ways back from where we got over the last couple.
But I do think the genius of this movie lives in its tragic ending. Like if you can get to that place where in the balls he has to put "We'll Meet Again" over a montage of, nuclear war explosions.
Yeah.
Hydrogen
that's
bomb.
Ominous as fuck.
That's such a good song choice. So good.
It's such a good song choice. Anyone?
And correct me if I'm wrong, because
the anthem of World War II.
I can't remember if that's what they used, but doesn't Fallout 3 start with the radio playing that song? and then a nuke goes off. I'm pretty sure it's that song. I can't remember because that was years
and
ago.
if it was, it was just a
total homage. I mean, we could spend another hour
this,
talking
right?
about homages to this film. They're all over the place.
Yeah.
Armageddon has
maybe
one.
to all Kubrick in general. Yeah. Yeah, I remember the first time I saw this movie. When it got there, like that was one of those moments where like just my jaw was just on the floor. So I guess what it's kind of a Kubrick thing. I feel like we fell into this trap a little bit when we were talking about Reservoir Dogs a few weeks ago. Like it's kind of hard to only talk about the movies of these really, powerful auteurs that have such an impact and such a voice in everything they do. Even though, unlike Quentin, well, sort of similar to Quentin Tarantino, they tackle genres. So this was Kubrick's comedy, and then he does a sci-fi film, and then he does a war film, and then he does a horror movie, and then he does. So it's almost what seems to be the most interesting to me is that you're aware you're watching this Kubrick film, and every single scene breaks rules of what you think that genre is capable of doing. So I feel like every time, which is maybe one reason why, as a high schooler trying to approach Dr. Strangelove as a comedy, or any of his films really, but if you're thinking of it, there's this level of expectation that I think we all have whenever we hear something about art. I'm kind of to this point now where like I don't really like watching trailers as much anymore. I don't even know if I want to hear critical reviews of stuff. If it's a creator I respect, I'm probably just want to see what they did because I like their brain.
Yeah, definitely.
But this is probably the third time I've seen this, and maybe even more than the first time, because the first time it really affected me. Every single
you hear that
scene,
marketing department, we don't need you. Stop driving up the budgets of films.
Well, we need you, but be a little more abstract. You don't need to tell us. We don't need to see the whole movie in a trailer. We just don't. I almost mentioned earlier when you were talking about the trailer, I have actually seen the trailer for this because they must have done a reissue or something, but the trailer for this would play before the DVD of The Professional, Leon the Professional, which I had on DVD. So I would always see this whenever like starting on the DVD, I would see this. And the main thing I remembered is you cut to George C. Scott on the bed with his secretary being like, blast off. And then they cut to explosions. And then for the title, they do the title. They have 3 different people read the title. So they have some like spooky guy going, Dr. Strangelove, then like a stentorian newscaster going, or how I learned to stop worrying. And then a sexy woman going, and love the bomb, which I always loved and I've never forgotten that you have your title is being broken up into 3 different areas, like your film. I guess your film is broken up into these 3 very different situations.
I mean, it's possible he wouldn't let it get on DVD and for that long. He was like, fuck you, you're going to the theater to watch this.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
Well, I guess also his only comedy, right?
Yeah, when would that have been? Leon the Professional was like early 90s?
Oh, that was like 94. Well, that was 94, I think. But whenever the DVD of it came out, I don't know when actually, probably late 90s or early aughts. It might have been. It probably was after Stanley Kubrick had already died.
I'm sure there are already there are also a bunch of people just in our generation who just from a distance looked at this and said, nope, fuck it. It's in black and white. I'm not even going to give it a chance.
Yeah.
And I hope that, on this podcast alone, I'm sure you guys too, I hope we have just tried to, break that down a little bit. There are things that are good that are in black and white. You don't have to be a snob cinephile. I mean, this is just one of them too. And I also feel like it adds I can't remember who I heard saying this one point. It was one of the old Golden Age directors. It may have been Billy Wilder, and they were just talking about what black and white actually does in terms of cinematography to storytelling with mood and symbolism. You don't realize it. You just think it's an old movie, but why you would choose to do it this way? Everything is told in black and white. The world exists in black and whites. It's hard to pick up these grays and stuff. Everything seems binary, and I think that just played into. They could have shot this in color.
I mean, the thing is, they're still doing it. Like you got the Logan black and white cut, you got the Justice League Zack Snyder black and white cut, although that was called Justice is Gray. So it was, but yeah, like they're still doing this, so it's still a valid like medium to watch a film in. So give these black and white things a shot.
Especially when part of this film, as you said with Sterling Hayden in the Air Force Base, is shot like a very sincere noir.
Oh, hell yeah.
With cinematography, like what you can do with shadows in black and white is kind of unmatched, in my opinion. I think it's just way more dramatic and dynamic in black and white.
His cigar smoke in black and white is so much better, is what gives you that old timey like noir effect. It's like, it plays so much better in black and white than I could imagine this in color. I do love that Kubrick apparently he wanted the war room table to be green, so it would feel like they were arguing all this over like a poker table, which I don't think you would work in color. I don't think actually seeing a big bright felt green table would actually read well, but having the actors have that when playing it, I mean that whole war room set I love. The war room set with that massive table, that giant like UFO light ring above it, and all of the posters.
The big board on one end, and then when you pan to the other end, it's just some random spotlights in the background with some smoke. Like there is no wall there.
Yeah, exactly. All the negative space is so it does something strange. It doesn't. One thing I always thought when I first saw this movie was like, where are they? Is this supposed to be in the White House, like the way the normal Situation Room is? Like, there was so much negative space that it kind of creates this. It's supposed to be set in the Pentagon, but it kind of creates this illusion that like they could technically be anywhere. Like I don't know if that makes sense. It's the President of the United States. He's talking to his head generals, but this doesn't feel like anything that we had seen before in terms of like what might look like inside the Pentagon or inside the White House.
I love that the war room catering was just all fucking cakes too. Yeah. Like,
that's the famous.
Let's get hopped up on sugar and decide the fate of humanity. Yeah.
That is so great. I just love the long line, like all these tables set up of all these like desserts. But apparently that was like the cut ending from this. I don't know if you guys already both know this, but it was originally supposed to end in a big pie fight.
Oh God!
Oh my
God! All covered in pies.
Tell me they shot that. I want to find that.
There's like a production still. You can see a production still. It was apparently just it failed so spectacularly of them trying to film it because it read funny. It was like really like this only works if it's dead serious. Yeah. And instead it just read like these guys are having a fun pie fight, and like this is not the way to end this film. But in concept I get that of these politicians are devolving into a food fight.
I do like the ending he went with instead, but I'd still like to see that.
Oh yeah. They could have worked that in a little earlier. I think George C. Scott, when he's like the whole, you can't fight in the war room. Yeah. He could have gotten like one pie in on the Russian ambassador. They could have had a missed opportunity then. Yeah.
It's been the week for missed opportunities in films.
Yeah, I don't know, man. This film, have you guys seen? So you said you both had not seen Lolita until like you were older.
Yeah, a couple 6 years ago, I saw Lolita for the first time.
I still haven't seen it because I didn't want to end up on a watch list.
No, it's totally worth watching. I feel like these two films kind of go together in his canon when you start kind of trying to see like where he was in his career and the kind of things that he was with. I don't know. I still just can't. I kind of can't believe that he did this for like his second one. I guess it's not so surprising after doing Lolita first, but I don't know. I know Stanley Kubrick kind of stands alone, and I know that this kind of movie is challenging, but it's kind of hard to imagine anybody trying to approach the kind of material he chooses nowadays without a whole bunch of like guns and explosions or really fast cutting. Like I feel like everybody. I was listening to somebody the other day. I think it was Scott Cooper, got directed, Crazy Hard and Hostiles and Out of the Furnace. And I think he was talking about how basically he's just living a life of constant disagreements with producers on how he has to defend every single lull in his movies. Like if there is one tiny little moment where people have a chance to think, they say, we got to speed it up. The pace is, nobody's going to want to see this. Nobody's going to want to take a chance. And I don't know, every time I watch a Kubrick movie, I'm just reminded that that's not true in principle. There are ways to break down form and to present things differently. And yeah, they might be challenging, but when you do them right, they turn into that dirty word, which is art, which I don't know. I think he does seem to consistently live in this space.
That really dirty word, subversive art.
Subversive art, yeah.
And a lot of that is what he's good at. Like he subverts expectations a lot. He turned, a science fiction film into a 30-minute acid trip.
Yeah, he did.
It's and I mean that
turned
is
a horror film into something slow. He completely played against form in The Shining too, right? I love listening to people talk about like, oh, I saw that for the first time the other day, and it's like it's terrible. It's not a horror movie. It's like, well, it's a Kubrick movie. It's something else.
I mean,
did you feel that overwhelming sensation with this? Did you feel like no one else could have made this? Like that very classic, like, oh.
I don't know. I feel like this is one of the films that has the least of his stamps on it, except for, the occasional, like the way it's cut and the way that the timelines move consecutively, and there's like the looming threat, all that sort of stuff. I like that. There's a lot of stuff in there that you recognize as his style, but I feel like this is the one that's almost like the least of his stamp on it.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I mean, because it's easily his funniest film. It's like the most out and out comedic, and with Peter Sellers, because in Lolita he's also a supporting character. He kind of dips in and out occasionally, but here he's almost, except for the stuff with Major Kong on the plane, like he is almost always in the scene. Really, once we get into the film like proper, and it is that he's such a strong flavor, Peter Sellers, at complete odds with what we think of with Stanley Kubrick and that perfectionism. That this does feel so different, but I think still is still so good. It's still so good and so necessary to check out and to include within like the roster of Kubrick's like great films. I think because it's so different from the typical what we think of as a Kubrick film.
Yeah, I will bring it back to something I said a couple of weeks ago when I was talking about a film, and this is one of those examples of cinema where you see everyone on their fucking A game. Yeah, like he's on his A game, Sellers is on his A. Like everyone in the film brings their A game to this, and it sells because of that. And this is basically a collaboration of master collaborators.
Yeah, forming a masterpiece, just another masterpiece. Yeah, man, I agree. Dave, did you feel like I kind of can't help but think about like composition and cinematography, just because everything we just said is just big picture storytelling stuff. And like, obviously he thinks about all those things too. And the acting is incredible. The more obvious things are incredible. But in terms of cinematography, I kept noticing this time, I don't think I thought about it the first time, that he went handheld every time he was around what I would call regular people, the low-level soldiers, away from a lot of the stuff in the plane, but definitely away from Slim Pickens. Whenever it was following the other guys or cutting to the other guys, just a little bit of life in the camera, a lot of life in the camera, out in the little battle that happens outside of the Air Force Base. And then every time he would cut into one of these main roles we're talking about, these powerful decision makers, it was fucking on tripods, and it was still. And with Sterling Hayden, he was raised way up, and Peter Sellers was just like sitting in this, he was often just sitting like in these tight close-ups that are just sterile almost. Like it was very interesting with the contradiction that he was using with that. And
one of my favorite shots in the film
this time.
One of my favorite shots in the film is the phone booth. When he's trying to call the president, and he doesn't have enough money, and it's almost like they just set the camera up and went, all right, everybody, that's lunch. We'll come back and see what he does after this.
Yeah,
yeah, seriously.
But it's a beautiful shot, and it works because you're 100% on him, and it's like, what's he going to come out with? What's his situation? Oh my God, he hasn't got enough money. He's trying to get money off this guy. This is ridiculous, and because it just forces you to watch that and nothing else, it's painful but hilarious.
It also makes you start counting down those minutes, right?
Yes.
Because I think that there's like minutes left at that point. That moment, I'm glad you brought that up. One of the moments that I laughed really hard out loud this time was just a tiny little moment where Peter Sellers first steps into the phone booth, and he goes to close the door like you normally would, and the soldier just like doesn't let him go. I don't know, that just fucking killed me.
All right. Yeah, you're right. Colonel Bat Guano.
That was the only thing that took me out of it, was that name.
Yeah,
that guy.
A lot of the names. Yeah. I don't know. A lot of names. Turgid Sin is on the line.
The rest of them, but they didn't cross it. But Bat Guano, okay, yeah, you've crossed the line. You've made me aware that I'm watching someone trying to be funny.
Was good for you, President Merkin.
Yes. That was great.
Yeah, that was hilarious. Lionel Mandrake, Colonel Lionel Mandrake. I love that one. Well, kind of hard to talk about these movies at this level. Of course, I think we gave it our best,
especially in the time we have.
Yeah, and I mean, yeah, just in general, I feel like it's when stuff does slip into like really high art like this, like I think it is something that you have to experience. So if we stumbled through this, and if you got anything out of it, I hope it will just encourage people out there to give it a chance. If you're like these two guys, and maybe
if you haven't seen it yet.
Many legit reasons why you haven't seen it. Just to put it back on you guys, are you happy you watched it? Should you have seen it by now, or do you think it's good you waited this long?
Yeah, definitely happy that I watched it, and it's as of this recording, it's streaming on HBO Max if you want to check it out. So it's, if you got HBO Max, very easy to check. It's so short; it's barely 90 minutes.
Yeah.
So I think it's definitely, it's because some of the Kubrick films that I still have blind spots on are, they're like 3 hours. Like Barry Lyndon is like a 3-hour long film, and that feels like a real commitment. This is not a long commitment. You're in, you're out, and it is honestly. I mean, it is. It might be. It's maybe a toss up between this and Being There of Peter Sellers' best work. I do think that's alone a strong enough reason to check out. It's great performances. It's Kubrick. He's in like the realm right now in this period of becoming like the master Stanley Kubrick. But I definitely recommend. I'm really glad that I actually watched it all the way through. I did enjoy it more than I thought that I might.
I was pleasantly surprised. I was very pleasantly surprised.
Good.
It's tight, but it's also well paced, and like I said, everyone brings their A game to it. It's worth a watch.
Well, fuck yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that was our should have seen it by now, Dr. Strangelove, 1964. Again, if anybody wants to, you feel free to reach us on the socials and submit something that you have never seen, and maybe we'll get around to talking about it.
Yeah.
Before we wrap up, we usually at the very end try to talk about if there's any recommendations anybody has seen
honorable mentions
recently that you might want to throw out there. Jeff, you had anything you guys been watching over there at your place?
Mainly Hacks. Just finished Hacks. So good.
Cool.
Love that Gene Smart. Give Gene Smart some love. Go support Hacks.
Nice.
I did. This wasn't recently, but I was reminded watching this that I think is a pretty decent film. Is worth checking out. It's very similar to this in some ways. Is that film Eye in the Sky, which came out some like 7 or 8 years ago with Helen Mirren.
The drone program.
Yeah, I think it's Alan Rickman's last film role as well, and Aaron Paul. And it's kind of going through the same thing of the chain of command to like launch a drone strike, and how it's like all of these people are like, no one wants to be the one to give the go ahead to this. So it's not quite. I think there was like some trailer blurb that was like, it's this meets Dr. Strangelove, which is inaccurate because it's nowhere near a comedy the way this is, but it deals with some of the similar bureaucratic like red tape. And it's Alan Rickman's, I believe, his last role, which is reason enough to check out Eye in the Sky as well.
Definitely. Definitely. Dave, how about you, dude?
I haven't really. I've been back at work a little bit, so I haven't really checked anything out since Sunday because I usually get all my watching in at the end of the week. But I am gonna be watching Loki straight after this. If anyone has seen episode 4 and didn't watch it right to the end, go back and watch it right to the end. There's an after credit scene for the first time in episode 4. Just saying.
Yeah.
Oh, Jesus Christ! Of course, I took your recommendation from the last episode, and I checked out that Amazon Prime film, The Tomorrow War.
Yeah.
That was a pretty interesting seeing a movie with that. That budget was $200 million. That was quite a large purchase. It was supposed to come out last Christmas, not this past Christmas, the one before that.
I'm
and then,
surprised they dumped that to streaming. I'm really surprised.
I read a whole big article about that, and it was a big decision to try to go for that. But, as everyone says, it gets all, way more viewers because of it. But it was the first time out of all these, there have been some good movies that have come out of streaming, but it was the first time I saw a movie of this size. There are a lot of like not just like visual effect. Obviously, this shit's into CGI with aliens and stuff.
Well,
but
some of the aliens are practical. I found out some of those aliens are actually operated practicals.
Oh,
which is pretty cool.
That's cool.
So yeah, that was quite an experience. If you have a nice sound system, please don't watch that on your computer. Please.
Oh, hell yeah.
What about on your phone? Can you watch it on your phone?
Oh man, Jesus.
Your phone might explode. Like the speakers will be hanging on the bottom of it.
So yeah, I mean that was fun though. That was cool. Definitely if you're in the mood for a blockbuster. But so next week, Dave, we're going to be talking about 2 new films. Yeah, we're going to try to get back to the cinema. What are we going to be watching?
It's a big week. We're a little bit late to the game, but we had 4th of July and that sort of thing come in, so we're going to be talking about F9.
Yeah.
It's all about family.
Nice.
So, and I did see on Twitter this week someone come out with an absolute perler, and it's like, if the next movie isn't Fast 10 Your Seatbelts, they're walking the hell out. I'm like, yes, that's amazing. Not my gag. Someone else on Twitter came up with that, but it's amazing. It stuck with me. Yeah,
that's fucking good.
Yeah, and of course we're going to jump straight onto the very, very soon to be released Black Widow, because Marvel's back, baby.
Like it went anywhere. Like, still, Marvel's still here, baby.
Yeah.
As we're now on Loki, the 3rd of 3 MCU TV shows, one after the other.
Here to stay. And we're excited. We're excited. Jeff, just one more time, where can everybody find you guys?
Yeah,
on the show?
We are at and almost starring on Instagram and Facebook. You find us wherever you listen to your podcasts. We just had Jonathan Braylock of the fantastic podcast Black Men Can't Jump in Hollywood and Netflix's Astronomy Club on to talk about Men in Black. Great episode. So nice. Come check us out.
Sweet, man. Well, thank you for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, man. So good to be on again. Thank you, dude.
Absolutely. All right, film fans, we'll see you next time.
Woo.